Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Simple Low Carb Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Corey Conklin, and today we're going to discuss how to read a nutrition label. Nutrition labels are one of the more intimidating things that people look at and go, oh no, I don't understand what they mean. What do they say? What are all these milligrams and grams and percentages and what do I need to know? What do I need to read? These ingredients, these are some of the strangest names I've ever seen for ingredients. And well, we're going to take a few minutes today. We're going to go over the anatomy of a nutrition label, what to look for on the nutrition label, and basically just to help you so that you can know what you're looking at. Take a look at what's actually in them so that you can be knowledgeable about, okay, this is what I'm eating, this is what I am not eating, and you can put food back where it belongs because what's in there is not what you want to eat, or you can put it in your cart and take it home. So first, we're going to start off the basic anatomy of a nutrition label. Now, if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, I'm also recording this for YouTube, and hopefully when I get done here, you'll be able to see my screen on the YouTube channel also. So if you want to see what I'm discussing later on, check out our YouTube channel at the Simple Low Carb Lifestyle Podcast on YouTube. But a basic nutrition facts label will give you several things. It's going to give you the serving size. It's going to tell you how many servings are in the container, usually. It'll tell you how many calories there are per serving. It's going to give you total fat, cholesterol, sodium, total carbohydrates, protein, and it'll also give you vitamins and mineral breakdown also. Most nutrition labels will also include the ingredients, or that would be your ingredient list, but they're usually right next to each other. So when you look at the nutrition facts, first thing you want to take a look at, okay, well, what is the serving size? Because that is vitally important. As we're going to see in a couple of minutes, a lot of manufacturers like to play games, and they will put on the front of a package. So what I have in front of me is actually the nutrition facts for a biltong, private labeled biltong for a very large retailer in the United States. And if you look at per serving, which is a 1 ounce serving, it'll tell you there are 90 calories, there's 2 grams of fat, there is 30 milligrams of cholesterol, 425 milligrams of sodium. This is what I want you to pay attention to. According to the per serving nutrition facts, there are 0 carbohydrates, 0 sugars. We'll get back to that as to why that's important in a second. It also says there's 16 grams of protein. So you would look at this, and the front of the package boldly states 0 sugar per serving. Now, this manufacturer and or retailer was nice enough to include nutrition facts per container. So there's a total of 2 servings in this bag. Now, if you're like me, a 2 ounce bag of any meat snack, you're going to eat the whole thing. You're not going to have half the bag and set it aside. So if you were to eat the entire 2 ounce bag of this biltong, let's see, it's 210 calories, 5 grams of total fat. There's 2 grams of saturated fat in the container, but it says there's 0 grams of saturated fat per serving. We'll get back to how they pull that off. How can it say 0 per serving and 2 per container? Legally, they're allowed to do some sneaky things that I don't agree with. 65 milligrams of cholesterol. Sodium is 950 milligrams. This is where it gets interesting. Total carbohydrates. It shows 1 total carbohydrate in the container. There are 2 total sugars in the bag. So if you eat 2 servings, there are 2 grams of sugar. If you eat 1 serving, according to this label, there are 0 grams of sugar. Now, if I went by the marketing on the front of this container, I would have said, great, there is 0 sugar in here, not a problem, I'll eat it. Until you flip the bag over and realize, well, there's a minimum of 1 sugar per serving. Just if you do the math, it shows 2 sugars for the whole bag. There's about, it literally says about 2 servings per container. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So there's a minimum of 1 sugar per serving. And yet, the way our government has allowed things to be done, if your total carbohydrate, total sugar count is less than, I believe, 1, it could be a little lower than that. But if it's below a certain limit, you can round it down to 0. So what they did on the package was, legally, we can put 0 carbohydrates and 0 sugars because it's below the legal limit. And yet they actually use raisin juice concentrate. So raisins are just sugar-laden, dried-out grapes. And what they use for the sweetener in this is raisin juice concentrate. So there is sugar in here. But they still play the game of 0 carbs and 0 sugar per serving, despite the fact there truly is sugar in every serving. So that's your basic anatomy and breakdown of the nutrition facts label. It's going to give you your calories, your total fat, cholesterol, sodium, total carbohydrates, and protein. The ones you really want to pay attention to are going to be your total carbohydrates, your protein, and even your fat content and a low carb or ketogenic diet. Obviously, your ratios of fat to protein is going to be important, and also if you are sticking with especially a total carbohydrate intake, you want to pay attention to the total carbs. Now, just as a quick side note, if you were doing net carbs, if there was any dietary fiber underneath the total carbohydrates, the belief is you can subtract that from the total carbs because the fiber does not negatively affect the body. The only time I would even consider doing that would be with vegetables such as broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, those above ground cruciferous vegetables. But personally, I count total carbohydrates because I don't trust the marketing of these companies. As we just shown here, their marketing is telling you 0 sugar, and yet their label clearly shows you, oh, by the way, there is sugar in this package. The next one we're going to take a quick look at is another way that, well, actually, it really goes into why I started Select Savory Seasonings. I started Select Savory Seasonings because I was at the grocery store one day. I grabbed 50 different jars of barbecue rubs. Every last one of them started with sugar as the first or second ingredient, and yet total carbohydrate was 0. That doesn't make sense. Sugar is a main ingredient, but there's no carbs. Well, again, I finally figured out that, well, if you look at most of those, you'll find the serving size is 1/4 teaspoon. So they lower the serving size so small that legally they can put their 0 carbohydrates in their product, despite the fact that sugar, many a times, is the first or the second ingredient. And you'll see here in a minute, or I'll discuss in a minute, another one, that sugar is the first ingredient. On this one in particular, it's a large jar of barbecue rub. Salt is the first ingredient, sugar is the second, and it states total carbohydrates of 0. Now, if you're like me, you don't use 1/4 teaspoon of seasoning on your meat. The general rule of thumb is a tablespoon per pound of meat. So 1/4 teaspoon or a tablespoon, that's a big difference. You're going to be eating a lot more sugar than you realize by using these barbecue rubs and seasonings that are using sugar and yet saying quote unquote 0 total carbohydrates. So that's another reason you're going to want to be able to, you want to flip over the package, look at the nutrition facts, and don't just rely upon the marketing on the front of the package. I've actually compared here to one of my own seasonings, and ingredient wise, this is blended from paprika, onion, garlic, basil, dry mustard, cayenne pepper, and black pepper. Obviously, no sugar of any kind. Now, the nutrition label on all of our products, I give you a full teaspoon serving of nutrition label. And the reason for that is it'll give you a better idea as to what's in there. So this actually has 1.4 carbs per teaspoon. It does show a little bit of fiber in there and 0.2 sugars. Now, yes, technically I can take that sugars, round it to 0 because it is so low. I will not do that because I want you to know exactly what you're ingesting. I want to know exactly what I'm ingesting. So that's one of the things that I have done is to make sure when you look at the nutrition facts on our labels and on our website, it'll always be a teaspoon serving, not a quarter teaspoon. And it'll show you every last detail. We're not going to round things down to zero. Actually, this is a organic barbecue rub. First ingredient is organic cane sugar. Your body doesn't care if it's organic or not organic. If it's sugar, it's sugar. It doesn't make it healthier if it's certified organic. And yet again, it's a quarter teaspoon serving. Shows 0 total carbohydrates, total sugars of 0, including added sugars of 0. So this is 0 grams of added sugars, but cane sugar is the first ingredient. Again, legally, they're just doing what they're allowed to do, and it's a marketing game that our government allows them to do. So you need to be able to flip things over, read the nutrition label, and find out really what's in there. Don't just rely on the fact that it says 0 carbs on the front or 0 sugar on the front or keto friendly or low carb friendly. So you want to read the nutrition facts, but you want to also pay attention to serving size and then look at the ingredient list. Now we've, one of the major manufacturers of beef jerky has one out there. It boldly says 0 sugar right across the front of the package. And of course, when I walked by that in the store, I'm like, I have got to take a look at this. So I grabbed it, turned it over, and ingredients are beef, water, salt, flavors, yeast extract, soy sauce, along with pineapple powder. There's a asterisk next to pineapple powder, and that says adds a dietarily insignificant amount of sugar. So they admit we're putting sugar in our product, but they're telling you whether or not the amount that they're using is really important to you or not. That makes no sense to me. I promptly put it right back on the shelf after taking a picture of it. It actually, reading the nutrition label, has at least 1 carbohydrate also as a result of probably the pineapple powder and several of the other ingredients they have in there. So again, just because something says 0 sugar doesn't mean, hey, I should go ahead and get this, because it may not truly be 0 sugar. Now, one of the mistakes I made a while ago was walking through the store, and there were pre-made hamburgers, pre-made bacon cheeseburgers, marked down. They were clearance because they were about to expire, and I'm thinking, great. I bought them, took them home, I threw them in the freezer. Several weeks later, for some reason, I said, I should have read the nutrition label on that first. So I turned it over, and wouldn't you know, there were 3 carbohydrates and 1 sugar per hamburger. And I eat a minimum 2 hamburgers per meal when I make hamburgers. So there's 6 carbs right off the bat. And generally you're thinking, well, it's beef. There shouldn't be any carbohydrates or sugars in there. Well, the ingredients on here, it contains beef, but also glucose syrup. Oh, that's sugar syrup. Hydrolyzed corn protein, brown sugar, yeast extract, dried onion flavor, seed oils. So it's got some sunflower oil in there, which is not healthy for us. That'll be another podcast. Soybean oil. We will definitely be discussing seed oils here in the next couple of episodes. But even on something where you go, oh, it's going to be good for me. I buy it all the time. It's nope, grab it, turn it over, especially if it's something that's been pre-made, and read the nutrition facts before you buy. That could save you some grief and aggravation in the long run. Now, in my family, for myself, diet sodas are something that on occasion I have, especially if I find a diet root beer that I've never tried before. And we had Wegmans open up near us, and we were walking through the store like, wow, there's a diet ginger beer. This looks great. And as usual, I grabbed it and looked at the label. Well, diet soda should be sugar-free, last I checked. Well, I'm looking at the nutrition label right now. Total sugars of 9. Wait a minute. Diet soda, 9 total carbs, 9 sugars. Went right back on the shelf and never touched it again. Had I just relied upon the fact that it says diet, I would have bought it, I would have drank it, and I would have been ingesting sugars that I had no clue were there. So you need to read the nutrition labels. I know that they can seem daunting doing that sometimes. I understand that they can be scary, but if you take your time and just understand that you need to really pay attention to serving size, servings per container, the total carbohydrates, and then look underneath there, the sugars based upon the total carbohydrates, and then read the ingredients list. Is sugar listed on the ingredients, and yet it says 0 carbs and 0 sugar? It happens more often than you think. Also, you need to pay attention to the serving size because, and I'll pick on peanut butter, for example, because somebody on Twitter made a comment that the serving size on peanut butter is just entirely too small. And they were joking because, well, the serving size may be a tablespoon, for example, and that could be, 3 or 4 carbohydrates. Well, if you're like me, it's not 1 tablespoon at a time. It's 3, 4, or 5. And before you know it, if you're like me and try to keep it under 20 carbs, you've just ingested your daily intake of carbohydrates because you didn't pay attention to the serving size while you were eating it. And you went well over what the serving size is. So it's very important to pay attention to that. Also, when you're looking at nutrition labels, you need to take a look at, keep in mind that there are lots of different names for sugar. Sadly, the industry has learned, the food industry has learned that, hey, I can call it sugar free and still put sugar in it, but I'm going to call it a different name, which just drives me batty. So we're going to switch back here if you're watching on YouTube here, and going to go through some of the names that you're going to find commonly used on the back of packages. There's dextrose, fructose, glucose, maltose, sucrose, beet sugar, brown sugar. General rule of thumb, I don't care what they call it. If it says sugar, it's sugar, because there's cane sugar, castor sugar, coconut sugar. If it says sugar, it's not good for you. Cane juice, anything with cane and juice, it's going to be sugar. Corn syrup, date sugar, Demerara, Demerara sugar. Sometimes it'll have sugar after it, sometimes it won't. Florida crystals, golden sugar, glucose syrup solids, maltodextrin. This is one that's used a lot. Maltodextrin is a sugar, and your body reacts to it just like sugar. See here, sugar. Agave nectar is a popular one, or agave syrup that you'll see a lot of times. And they'll say, well, it's all natural. It's good for you. Just because it's all natural doesn't mean it's good. Molasses or blackstrap molasses you'll see quite often. Corn syrup, evaporated cane juice, or as I've already mentioned, raisin juice, fruit juice, golden syrup. Of course, there's high fructose corn syrup. We've all heard of that. Honey, again, you may be thinking natural, but it's still sugar if you're trying to avoid it. Rice syrup, sorghum syrup. There are lots of names out there for sugar, and you need to be careful when you pick up a package to look at the ingredients. And if there's something on there you go, I have no clue what this is. What should I eat it or not? Most of us have a cell phone in our pocket. Google search the name and it'll tell you what it is, or search what is sucrose. You'll find out. Or is whatever the word is beet juice sugar? And you'll be able to find out real quick. So I understand that it can be intimidating, but keep in mind, by being able to read the nutrition labels, it's going to help you out tremendously. There are more and more companies out there that are coming out saying, oh, it's keto friendly. It's, or net carbs of 2 or 3, despite the fact that total carbs are 33 plus. And you start looking at the ingredients, and they're using variations of wheat, which have quote unquote fiber in them. And the fiber supposedly doesn't count. And yet we're finding out that wheat is one of the things that causes a lot of pain and aggravation in our bodies. So it's like, oh, it's keto friendly, but you're still ingesting something that, especially in my case, I'm trying to avoid. So that's a basic breakdown on reading nutrition labels and what to look for. If you have any questions on those, you always feel free to send me an email at selectsavory@gmail.com. I'd be glad to help you out as best I can. And again, back to our Select Savory seasonings, I wanted to talk about our Mediterranean dry rub. This is been very quickly becoming one of my favorite seasoning blends to use around the house. It's great on white meats in particular, so fish and pork. It's excellent for seafood. It is also good on burgers, steaks. It's it's an Italian blend with a twist. So it has a thyme, oregano, sage, basil, rosemary, garlic. Then it has lemon peel and black pepper. And of course, we recommend 1 tablespoon per pound of meat. And we used this a week or so ago. And my wife said, is this lemon pepper? Because the lemon was a little more pronounced that day. And some bites it was there, some bites it wasn't. And it's a very, very versatile seasoning. I've thoroughly come to enjoy it, and I think that you will too. So check out our Mediterranean dry rub on our website at selectsavory.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code podcast. That gives you 15% off your first order, and we'd be love to get some of that to you and have you give that a try. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at selectsavory@gmail.com. And until next time, have yourselves a great day.